I want to welcome everybody into the Meinl Podcast. My guest today is legend Chris Brewer. He's the head of all things great at Meinl, including artist relations and a lot of other stuff that he probably doesn't get any credit for that he deserves. But you may have known him even before that, when he was the drum tech for the Dixie Chicks. That's right, Wide Open Spaces, you know the one. All right, but he's also a great dude. And I'm honored to call him my friend, and I'm honored to have him on the podcast. Chris, thank you for being here, man.
You're welcome. Now let's turn this around. We're here today with Harry Miree, who's a total mystery to me still in ways. Where did the black jacket come from? Where did the V-neck come from? And why Nashville? And all of these questions I have. Anyway, I'll tell you guys a little bit about Harry, what little bit I know. So one day I was just trolling around on the internet, as we all do, and I bumped into this scene of complete smartassery, and it was about symbol endorsements. And of course it caught my eye to see words across a YouTube thumbnail about symbol endorsements. And if you've not seen this video, just search Harry Miree symbol endorsements and it will come up. And it's great, good, solid, smart-ass fun, but with a lot of truth behind it. And so as soon as I saw it, I thought, I gotta know more about this guy. So I immediately start searching for more videos, and I see that he can play, but I see that he also has a lot of good messages in all of his other videos. Clearly, he's a working drummer here in Nashville. I looked at some of the timelines of like when Harry released videos, and they would be kind of spread apart, so I could tell, he must have been working at this time. So he's a working drummer, he's creating killer content. He wears this black leisure sports blazer jacket thing, and in every single video, all the time, on stage, I would see video of him wearing this on stage. So there's so many questions I had to have answered. So I reached out, I found Harry. I don't even remember how I contacted Harry, but I contacted him. We got on the phone, had a great conversation, and he had already started playing Meinl Cymbals, which was a serious boon to me, considering trying to work with him. And fast forward a few years, 2 years, and here we are already sitting in a studio where he's trying to turn the tables and make this interview about me rather than about him. But I refuse to let it go down that way. And so without further ado, we're here with Harry Miree.
Dudes.
Harry, thank you so much for being here.
It's my privilege. Thank you for being here, Chris. The world wants to know about you, and we can talk about me for a minute, but I'm not giving up on this. Okay. Go ahead.
When I saw all those videos I mentioned earlier in the introduction, I knew you'd be a good candidate for a podcast in the studio. But aside from that, I thought, if we're going to bring you in the studio and do this whole thing, then let's get you behind the kit. We're talking about how you are a serious working Nashville drummer, and a lot of aspiring musicians are coming here. They'd probably like to see what a guy of your caliber does day to day in the studio in your setting. And so I think that's why I brought you here. I knew there'd be some good belly laughs along the way. And we've had those.
Dude, for sure.
So, but I did add, I talked about all the aspiring musicians moving here. I would assume, you seem kind of like me. Sometimes you kind of insulate yourself from the meet and greet. You just do your own thing. But I can't help but think in your circles, you bump into new people who move here. So what's your advice to anybody who's an aspiring musician who wants to move to Nashville?
Dude, yeah, man, I get some version of that on the daily, because everybody's a musician here. The first thing I say is, dude, I don't do advice, and I really mean that, man. I'm not trying to be unhelpful. Part of the YouTube thing is like my attempt to document what the journey has been like for me, and I've extracted certain beliefs from those experiences. But it's all a bunch of trite shit that you've probably heard a bunch of times before. I think I just said shit, didn't I?
That's okay. Yeah. My podcast, the Meinl Podcast, has been marked explicit, regardless of whether or not that there's a curse word in there. So
my friends and I debate on off days on the road as we're walking through shopping malls. We debate how many kids hear the word shit or other relatives of that word from me for the first time in their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we think the numbers are pretty high. And I'm sorry to all the kids whose minds are poisoned. Oh man,
So why don't you do advice?
Cause I'm being dead serious. Cause I don't know what I'm talking about, dude. I am trying to succeed at being a drummer, and I cannot believe like the just oceans of fortune that have been dumped on me. But I'm a tryhard kind of, so I just live by the tryhard philosophies of, if load-in was at 9:30 today, I'll get here at 9:10, and maybe I'll polish my cymbals before I get here. Of course, I beat the crap out of them, and they don't look polished anymore. But I try and practice 10 times as much as I think talented people probably practice. You know what I mean? And I try to be nice to folks, but that's all like boring to say. I know that everybody who thinks they know what they're talking about sits on some throne somewhere and goes, those are the tenets: show up on time and be nice to people and practice a lot. I'll go wherever you want to go if you want to ask me more specifically about stuff.
It's totally refreshing. There's guys out there who, I mean, you just gave people a lot of advice without giving them advice. Things that they could have, if they were listening, they could have extrapolated from that. And you would think it was like, well, duh, of course, show up ahead of time. But man, so many people don't show up ahead of time, or so many people don't practice the way they should, or they think they're better than they really are, or...
You know what, man? I realize now as you kind of recap those, that those are all actually reflections of things that I've just failed at really horribly leading up to now. I feel lucky that I moved to Nashville a little later in life, because I struck out hard on every single thing you just listed, like in my early attempts at being a professional drummer and a couple of the other places I lived. I started playing for money, like in my teens. I'd play, the first like good money I made on the drums, I was playing musical theaters, like, 3-week runs of cabaret or something in like a community theater, and where they'd pay the band peanuts. And I remember a time in my life where I just had too much on my schedule, dude. I had 3 gigs on a Sunday. I got fired from all 3 of them because I would have done great at any one of them, but I used to live this life of cramming too much in, being late to everything, speaking in platitudes all the time, thinking, I'm pretty good at drums, I can show up and nail this, and just dropping the ball. So I guess really what I'm doing without realizing it is I am projecting and just telling you all the stuff that I like sucked at leading up to now and have tried to compensate for. And boy, am I thankful that it took me till I was 25 to get to Nashville. Nobody here knows me for those things because I kind of got them out of my system before I moved here, dude.
So you did the musical theater back where you're from, your hometown.
That's right, man.
Okay. We won't tell anybody where that is. We're going to retain the mystery.
Thanks, man.
So what made you choose to work in a musical theater?
Oh, dude, I mean, in the sort of sterile musical environment that I was raised in, that was like one of the only sort of infrastructured opportunities to play the drums. There wasn't like a budding rock and roll scene or something, At that time, I wanted to be in like the Foo Fighters, but we didn't have that sort of community of musicians growing up. We had like a snide clump of jazzers, we had one jazz club, and like I was not accepted among them, which I'm also thankful for. I didn't think that I really like wanted to reflect a lot of the stuff I saw them reflecting anyway. So, in the schools I went to a bunch of different high schools, but those didn't even necessarily have like a way to play the drum set, but the theater program maybe had a musical, and they ordinarily would hire like, local dads or something for $100 a night to like play the drums, and they just started hiring me instead, dude. And I've scaled that even from when I got out of school. Like, it's funny, all of music works this way. Like, you realize, oh, there's a bubble. There's this one lady who like directs all of the musicals in a 200-mile radius of this town. And so if she likes me on Little Shop of Horrors, she'll put me on Grease and Cabaret and Showboat and all this other stuff. So I've played a lot of musical theater, like, just through that. I'll add this too, man, because I've never said this on a mic before. Later, and this was like a formative experience for me too. Later when I went to college, one of the first little audition opportunities I saw taped to the telephone pole was like, Berkeley's Musical Theater Club is gearing up to do Aladdin or whatever they were doing. And I go, this is my shit, man. I was made for this. Like, and now I'm at this high level. Let me just go. And so I go wait in this hallway. It's like me and 20 other Asian kids who I would realize pretty quickly are just so much deeper in the musical theater arts than I could ever imagine being. And I went in there, and the audition, I just thought, harkening back to this list of things we were saying, maybe try and be good at if you want to succeed as a drummer, I thought, I didn't do any preparation for that audition. That had never occurred to me. So I went in and go like, I don't know, I'll just be badass at musical theater because that's who I am. And I went and they go, do you know any tunes? I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, what's your favorite musical number? I'm like, I don't know. I've played in these shows. I like them. They're like, all right, why don't you play, just pick anything from any Disney movie you've seen and just play it. I'm like, by myself. So I played that, what does Robin Williams sing as the genie? Never Had a Friend Like Me, you know that song? It sounded so dumb, dude. It shattered it shattered my concept of myself as a drummer. Like, that was horrible. And I went home and of course they never called me back. And of course I never played in a musical ever again. I'm thankful for that too because, you know, like I told you a second ago, that was just what was laying around as I was growing up. And I love musicals. I still, when I'm in New York, I'll go to one if I have a day off, but those aren't my hopes and dreams on the drums. So I'm kind of glad that like I ate shit on that as opposed to the stuff I'm doing now, which resonates with me a lot more. And I would have eaten shit on this if I hadn't learned the hard way then. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So, Nashville, why not New York or LA? You know, you've got the attire for New York and you've got the sunny disposition for LA, but why Nashville?
Are you saying I look like a homeless guy?
No.
I do.
I'm saying that you've got the black is
Right
good
on.
for New York.
Mm-hmm.
It could be Chicago also, I suppose. But, you know, when you think of like, okay, you've got 3 cities to move to in the United States if you're going to be a musician. So you've got the black smoking jacket for New York. You've got like I said, the sunny disposition for LA. But you're in Nashville. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but why Nashville?
Yeah, it's wrong. Dude, and that was my attitude too. So I had this disjointed experience in college of, it sounds like I'm changing the subject, I'm not. Halfway through college, I was in a band. And when we signed our deal, I left to go play with them. Now, surprise, surprise, the band broke up. And I returned to college in shame as an old man. I think I was probably like 24 by the time I got back. It's me and a bunch of 18-year-olds sitting in class. And my goal for that last year of college, before I was done, was, dude, I'm just going to first of all, I don't want to be a part of any musical entity that requires me as like part of its spirituality. In other words, I want to be handed a drum part and told, shut your mouth and play the drums. We don't want your opinion. Now, little did I know that's like the definition of Nashville, okay? But my attitude at the time was, I'm just going to take every audition from Antarctica to, those 3 cities you mentioned and everything in between. And whoever hires me, like, that's where I'll move and just start my life. And everything I've ever loved was made in Los Angeles. I certainly thought I was going to end up out there. I had a few auditions in New York, one in Nashville that I sort of forgot about. And the day I was signing my lease in LA, at the very end of school, a manager here in Nashville called me and said, hey man, no promises, but do you want to try a week out on the road with us? And I go, oh, you mean like get paid to play drums and maybe have enough room to like keep my drums in my house, have a driveway and not sit in an hour of traffic everywhere I want to go, for less than $2,000 a month to live in a closet, which I would in Los Angeles, and have to work 3 restaurant jobs a day. I was ready to go do all that stuff, but as soon as they called me and offered me that, I go, well, I guess I live in Nashville now, dude, because that's where the work is. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's cool. It just decided for you. The fate's just kind of spun it out that way.
Yeah, and I was intentionally wide open about, I'd like the opportunities to make those decisions for me. You're in a good position coming out of college, dude, especially I had such privilege to not have any responsibilities, man. No family members to take care of any of this. Like, I could just go totally fuck off in Alaska or something if I wanted to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, now that you're here, and you've been here how many years now?
This is year number 6 for me, dude.
Okay, so you've been here 6 years now. I'm curious as to what sorts of endeavors have constituted the bulk of how you make a living here. Which of those are your favorites, and which of them just pay the bills?
I dig that question, man. So I moved here to take a road gig. And what I learned pretty early on is there are a couple of bubbles of musicians here. One really clear one is like the lower Broadway dudes who play these shifts 6 to 10, 10 to 2, 8, like 4 hours. Don't take any breaks. Play a bunch of cover songs on Lower Broadway, and you compete for tips. Okay, there's that bubble, which happens to be totally unrelated to like this other bubble of like road people who. That's just what I fell into.
Okay, wait. I gotta ask. How much do the Lower Broadway guys make?
A lot more than me, dude. And I'll tell you why I know that. In 2015, a friend of mine who came off the road and started doing Broadway stuff, I guess his gig fell through on him, and so he's like, all right, back to Broadway to just like get my thing together. And he called me and said, can you help us out for a couple of weeks? And maybe it'll turn into a long-term thing. And I go, sure, what's a couple of Fridays and Saturdays won't hurt me. So this was like April of 2015. I went down to like, I don't remember the names of these places, Legends Corner and Second Fiddle, stuff like that. And we'd get on stage at 10 and we wouldn't stop till 2 a.m. And I'm not man enough, man. It was brutal. But you know what? That's the most money I've ever made in my life on the drums. I mean, like, I remember walking with $400 one night, dude.
That's killer.
Now, the price is, I don't want to speak for them. I just want to tell you how I feel about it. The price is like I was dead inside. There was no joy in I just remember by the second gig, you know what I mean? Like, that's how quickly this set in. I remember 3 or 4 songs in. I remember instead of listening to the music as I was playing, I started counting backwards from the end of the set. Like, how many more songs do I have to sit through before I can leave?
Wow.
And go home, dude. I mean, I was quite miserable, so I'll let them have the money.
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going. I was just asking about the money that you made doing that.
Okay, so that's a separate bubble of manlier men than me, and then you have your road people. That's what I fell into. And what started to overlap for me a little bit as the dudes that I share the road with sort of graduate to like demo scale sessions. So I started recording quite a bit too. And I find joy, and then, okay, lastly, the thing that changed my life that was supposed to very much be on the side is I make videos as well, and some money comes from that. And, you know, I know you just asked me to, like, maybe pick one that brings me the most joy, but the way I look at it is that none of them can exist without the others. Mm-hmm. Especially the road stuff and the video stuff. I wouldn't feel like I have a valid voice on the internet if I weren't actually doing this under real circumstances on the road. And I also, like, for whatever reason, I think if I am in one time zone for more than like a couple of weeks, I start to go insane, dude. And so I knew it's real stimulating for my brain to change my surroundings. I always underestimate how much that does for like my mental health, kind of. To just, you know, the trees look different in Oregon, dude. They look like giant Christmas trees, and they're really tall. You know what I'm talking about? And I don't know why it takes me going out there into Sheboygan for that to set into my brain chemistry. But that's good, man. And it's also nice to go where people are, you know, where being on stage and playing for people is maybe more novel in Sheboygan than it is in Nashville, Tennessee. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where there's music going everywhere. Wow.
You mentioned that you actually make some money off YouTube. You're talking about their monetization? That's
right, dude. That's part of it. So I actually just like published all this information kind of recently.
You did. And I want people to know they can go to your YouTube page. You did this one video where you make a killer breakdown of how much you made one year, how much you made the next year, and you include this in there, I think. So, yeah, I do. And some of it's fallen out of my head, but one thing I remember is that like YouTube ad money comes out to around like $1,000 a year, I think, which surprised me. That's like probably more than I was expecting. But I don't pay a lot of attention to that money. I use it. If I do touch it, it goes back into like making videos. You know what I mean? So I bought some lights that hang from my ceiling, for example, so I don't have to keep setting up soft boxes, stuff like that. But I also have almost 100 now. I lovingly call them Patrio dudes. These people that willingly like pay money into what I'm doing, believe enough into it that they throw a few shekels in every month, man. And in return, they get stuff that the public doesn't see. You know, I don't put out that many public YouTube videos, but a lot of them, man, I don't get the sense even that they're there for like the juicy extra content, man. I think they just want to support what I do. They just believe in it. They're patrons of the dude arts.
That's right. Exactly, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so my financial life is like sort of a hodgepodge of all those little streams of income.
No, that's cool. And I think that ties into what you were saying about how one thing, with the endeavors, like it's not like one thing brings you the most joy. One can't exist without the other. I think, you were talking about earlier about how you don't like to give advice, but I think that your YouTube channel is nothing but killer advice. If people listen and they read between the lines, they're going to pick up more advice than they would on most channels. And you also were wondering out loud earlier in a conversation that's not on this podcast, but you were wondering why people have been so kind to you online when there's so much hatred out there online. And I think the answer, what I was thinking, was that it's because you do give people a lot of practical advice without being that guy that says, hey, dude, every day's a Friday. That doesn't help you at all. Being told every day's a Friday does not help. But if you candidly and with humor explain how this or that works, or just share your experiences, people are going to walk away. If they're listening, they're going to walk away with a lot. And so I think that your candid way of sharing your experiences, which is advice, is a way that a lot of people learn. So there you go. That's why people dig it, and they're cool to you online.
Dude, thank you, man. You know what clicked for me as you said that is, and maybe we can call it advice. Here's how I've like situated that in my mind to make it make sense now, finally. I think I'm just talking to myself. I think I'm just making those videos and aiming them right at me 5 years ago.
They're pretty stream of consciousness kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, out of those videos, I guess my first question about your videos, because they're super interesting, what influenced you to start creating your own awesome YouTube page and the content you do? Like, what was the thing that made you say, I got to do that?
Dude, yeah, there were a couple of things, man. So the first is that I can roll all this into one. When I was in a band of my own, nothing that we ever did mattered at all until we learned to harness like video. And then people could see our personalities more than just having to hear that in the music. And it got around so much easier. And I finally, for the first time in my life, felt like we were speaking to people. And at that time, I also started to notice there's YouTube is a community unto itself, all right? Now, none of the guys that inspired me to make videos are drummers. They're guys like Zay Frank. I worship that guy, man. Anybody listening that's curious about this, check out Zay Frank, dude. In fact, I'll tell you the last video I watched before I just shut off the internet and said I'm making videos now, no more distractions. It's a Zay Frank video called Invocation for Beginnings. And I think that dude is like Freud is to psychology as Zay Frank is to the vlog. You know what I mean? That dude knows how to like speak truth into a camera. Okay. There's another channel called Vlogbrothers where these two, are you hip to them? These two, one of them is the now famous author John Green, who wrote The Fault in Our Stars and all this stuff. He and his brother Hank talk to each other. They decided as a project, like when YouTube was really young, to speak to each other exclusively through video instead of other means, and the public could watch their conversations. And they're still talking now. It's been like over a decade of them talking about everything under the sun, and they're so good at it, man. And the people that the millions of people that they've mobilized to do great things through being themselves on camera, like that means so much more to me than like anything that I've done by hitting a drum in an arena or something. You know what I mean? This is what makes me tick the most right now, is like how where can I make the most impact and like make people's lives better and stuff. And I'm learning more and more. It's stuff like that more than it is like wailing on drums and shit, especially if I can marry them.
Yeah. What was okay, so I got a couple of questions about your videos. So your 1928 overture, what was that? I can't tell. When I watch it, it's like you faithfully replicate it so well.
Thanks.
Your faces are outstanding that you're making. There's almost comedy in the air. But what I wonder is, was it comedy? Was it an ode to something you loved? Was it all of the above?
Dude, yeah, I need to unpack that question for myself at some point too. Overture was probably the second video I've ever made in my current iteration of videos. And that was it was a special time for me because that's like the least conscious I was making these videos. And so that's what it looks like when I played the drums, man. And if you go to one of my shows, that's what it looks like. If anything, I've had to dial it back, man. You know what I'm saying?
Dial back the drummer faces?
Yeah, because that's just what it looks like when I play the drums, dude. There's a certain video where that really came to a head, and I go, oh, I actually need to dedicate conscious energy to not looking like I'm having a stroke. But I am having a stroke while I play the drums, so that's just, you're just looking at truth there, man. But I liked that record when I was young, so I had played that. Those early videos were songs I had played
before. So you knew it. Okay. You didn't have to learn it from scratch.
No, I think I probably just, the way a lot of those videos work is, and this is how, later I would do videos where I play lots of different snippets of, there's that same year I made one where I'm playing lots of little Carter Beauford snippets from Dave Matthews Band stuff. I would just put those clips into Pro Tools 3 times, listen the first time, try and fail the second time, third time get it. So what you see on each of those is the third time.
Mm. So out of all your videos you've done, what was your favorite one you've created so far?
Favorite to me?
Yeah, what's the one that just brought you the most joy to put together?
Certain ones had, wow, what a question, because certain videos I've made had the most appreciated impact on my life, but those are different from the ones that I had the most fun making or that I like the most as a consumer of them. You know what I mean? I get the sense that you're asking which ones do I like as an audience member the most.
Yeah. Or, well, no, I guess that's not what I'm asking. I think what I'm asking is knowing your intent behind what you're putting out there, which one was as a labor of love didn't seem so much like work as you were editing it all? And because your editing's intense, dude. You do a lot. So as a labor of love, what just didn't feel at all like work while you were doing it? Was there one more so than others? It's okay if there wasn't.
Well, they all feel like work, man, and I have a certain lust for work, though.
Yeah.
I think it comes from being a loser in school or something and going well, maybe if I just try harder, people will like me. So, I think part of the unhealthy toxins in my brain that drive me to stay up till 6 a.m, editing some of those is maybe if I sit here and just poke at it a bunch, it will be good. And some of them are a little overboard. The one that I thought would just be a total slam dunk, dude, this was a lesson for me, but I was amused making it. In 2014, the Chainsmokers' first big song was called Selfie. This song is god-awful. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. All right, you know this song. Do you know I have a video of me playing that song?
I've not seen it.
Do you know why you haven't seen it? Because it's my least viewed video of all time. I think YouTube goes out of its way to bury this thing. Okay, I have videos that have hundreds of thousands of views. Selfie has 20. 19 of those are me, and the 20th one was my mom, I think. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we're the only two that have seen that video. I was hurt at the time. I was on the road every weekend, and I messed up my arm, and so I couldn't play a full tune. And at that time, I had this commitment to play, release this video every week, and I knew that I couldn't play with both hands. So I just looked at the charts. What can I do that will just make everybody love me? What's the most searchable, popular song? Well, at that time, it was Selfie. It really was. The world's forgotten song, rightfully. And, dude, so I held the camera, one of these, DSLR cameras, one of these heavy things. I held it, pointed at my face like a selfie cam, and I filmed, mountains of footage of me playing, individual drums and cymbals and other weird things. And I layered them not only in audio, but also in video. I will never remember how long that took, but it was an era of my life filming all this dumb stuff. And by the time I got to the end of it, I was I just turned Selfie into a jam, dude. I can't believe I'm admitting to this. I love that's probably one of my favorite videos ever made, and nobody gives a shit. And so another reason it's my favorite video is it's taught me the lesson, to never again do what I think is going to bring me viewers or what people like me for. Dude, I should just do stuff that I think is cool. And 100 times out of 100, that's what I get rewarded for.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. You were asking earlier, all the people that are listening to this podcast, you weren't privy to this conversation, of course, but Harry was trying to pick my brain about Meinl and, Meinl, what makes us tick, that kind of a thing. And I was struggling to come up with it, just like I think Harry was struggling to explain himself. Not struggling, but no one ever likes to sit there and try and like step outside themselves and explain what makes them tick. It's a tough question. But I think that's the key. Just do what you like and everything else follows.
Yeah, shouldn't that be added to the pile of obvious stuff we were talking about earlier? And somehow this didn't dawn on me until I spent a week of my life making that dumb selfie video.
Well, a couple more questions, then I'll let you go from my grasp, because I like to make our podcast so that it's not so long that people have to like get in their car and then turn it off and then come back later in the day and get back and go, oh, where was I? I
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I know that you're halfway through a sentence, but I'm going to interject to say that I really appreciate that choice on your part. Your podcasts are like the exact length of the runs that I go on.
Perfect.
And so Meinl Radio Podcast has been like the soundtrack to my exercise recently.
My voice? Awesome.
Yeah, your soothing voice, dude. So thank you for that. All right, go ahead.
You're welcome. Here's some more soothing voice for you. Now, I got to ask, so we can let everybody out there know like what goes on with you. Here's the best question. It's just totally straight Matt Lauer. I just don't have the pen to hold and ask you this. What's next for Harry Miree?
Dude, dig it. I'll tell you what's on my mind right now. I halfway mentioned it a second ago. I've lived my entire life up to this point. I just turned 30 a couple of days ago, dude.
Nice.
So it's basically over for me. You know what I'm saying?
You're done.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
No
hope.
Nothing works right anymore. Drumming included. Dude, so I have lived the first 30 years of my life in this really self-absorbed look-at-me way. And that's like becoming a lot less interesting to me. And now that I have like the small little modicum of influence that I have over the world, and I see that like, wow, my choices, what to say, what to talk about, like what energy to put towards those things, like they actually are getting to the point where they're making a little bit of an impact. The thing that keeps me up at night now is like, how do I don't even want to say introduce a charitable element to that. How can I harness that and just finally make my life not about me? Could I use like the privileged position I have to like just flood schools with drum sets, like make schools maybe like not like the schools I went to. That's really ungrateful of me to say because I went to cool schools. I didn't have any access to music really, like.
You just didn't have a Thomas Swing Star in your school like I had in mine, did you?
That's what I'm talking about. Did you have a Thomas Swing Star at your school?
With the Zola code on the inside of the shells.
Yeah, and so what impact did that have on your life? Am I out of my mind, or was that a special thing?
No, totally. It made me. I mean, I got to play drums throughout the day at school, and it just fostered that love even more.
Dude.
So you're not off base.
Okay, cool. Like that's my impression, and I went to a bunch of different schools, but one of them sort of had a vibe in that direction. They had like this kid had donated a drum set, and I could, instead of eating lunch, go into this music room and play drums. And
Would you play drums? Did you have those faces that you made?
Oh, always, dude.
So would people walk in and see you making those faces while you were playing at lunchtime?
That was the first time I ever felt noticed by another human being, I think, was because the door right next to the drums had a window in it. People would walk by and just,
That's awesome.
I think I have old video footage of myself playing gigs when I was 13 years old or something. It looks less bearded, but otherwise, a little more bowl cut, a little more braces, a little more glasses, but the faces are, if you can imagine, just as hideous. Anyway, that's an arbitrary example, like, pumping schools full of drum sets or whatever.
Just how can you make a difference?
Dude, that's kind of what I'm getting obsessed with. And I'm open. I'll tell you what else is happening in my life that I want to do this right. I am being approached all day, every day now by like, big companies who like want me to, I wouldn't say advertise, just sponsors who want me to talk about their shit. And I'm all these drum companies that come and want me to talk about their fucking thing. I'm completely disinterested in that. I know I'm not going to say yes to any of that. But some other companies are like getting into the conversation too, and the right one hasn't come along yet. But I've also started to really obsess over, and you're someone that you're like top of my list of people that I would want to talk to about like how to deal with this. But I've kind of recognized my responsibility with that too. Go like, well, this is an opportunity too, man, to like to spread the aspects of the world that I think are good, man. Amplify those things, and I finally like sort of have a chance to do that. So that's what I stay up at night thinking about right now. I haven't solved it, as you can tell.
I love it. Harry, dude, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chris. Your episode is next, my dude.
I can't wait.
Thanks for listening to Meinl Radio. If you liked this episode, please head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We would appreciate it very much. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.